Hi, this is Andre, and thanks for checking out Synthisophy. Synthisophy is scientifically integrating the wisdoms of history, based on fact and truth, into our present culture. Let's take a look today at the introduction to Synthisophy. The introduction talks about polarization, take the survey, and the hot and cold water test. So let's talk about polarization. Here's a way to visualize it: the political polarization of current society. Remember the bell curve? The regular bell curve here is in red. The regular bell curve refers to a normal distribution of values across a range. It looks like a bell. Let's look at the distribution of human height. Looking at the blue line, the average height is right about here. That looks to be 66 inches, which is that 5 feet 6 inches? Yes, that's the average height, 5 feet 6 inches. That's the average. It's right in the middle, with a range of the number taller and shorter than average, moving down and away from the average in both directions, also making the shape of a bell. Note that the red curve is a perfect bell curve and is the normal distribution. And as we can see, the actual distribution of human height is quite close to the normal bell curve. Now, let's take a look at the polarization of the U.S. population that is politically engaged, as presented in the article titled Political Polarization, 1994 to 2017, from the Pew Research Center. Looking at the diagrams of the politically engaged in 1994, 2004, 2014, and 2017, you see a development over time. Note, in 1994, there is no split between the left and the right. Kind of looks like a bell curve. In 2004, we can see a split starting. By 2014, we can see an increase in the polarization as the split widens. Democrats keep moving farther left, Republicans keep moving farther right. And by 2017, there's a nearly perfect upside down bell curve. That's the exact opposite of a normal bell curve. Does that mean we're not normal? Not necessarily. But it does show just how divided and polarized we, as a nation, have become. We here at Synthisophy are centrist. How do we know? Our staff took the Ideological Consistency Scale survey. This was provided by the Pew Research Center to see where we are on the political spectrum. Here's how the survey works. There are 10 questions, each with 2 statements. One statement is a very conservative position, the other statement is a very liberal position. You read both statements and you circle the one that you think best describes your political view. If perchance neither one of them describes your view, just leave it blank. Then, in order to score the tests, individual questions are scored as follows. Each one that you circled liberal for, give yourself a -1. For each response that you chose the conservative angle, give yourself a +1. For those that are no answer, 0. Then add up all the responses, and scores will range from -10, all liberal to every question, to +10, all conservative to every question. Respondents were then grouped into one of 5 categories. If you got a score between +7 and +10, consistently conservative, aka far right. If you got a score of +3 to +6, mostly conservative, also known as moderate right. If you got a score between -2 and +2, mixed, you would be a centrist. If you got a score of -3 to -6, mostly liberal, aka moderate left. If you scored -7 to -10, that is consistently liberal, aka far left. How did we all do on the survey here at Synthisophy? We all came out with a value between -2 and +2, and as a group we averaged -1. The question now is, where do you fall on the political spectrum? Take the survey and find out. Now that you have an idea where you stand on the political spectrum, let's do the hot and cold water molecule experiment to get an understanding of how your brain works. Note that your brain is an extraordinarily complex organ with billions of nerve cells, neurons, all interconnected and firing away to generate your consciousness and sense of self. Note also that at conception you are just one cell, one single human cell in the womb. And from there, that one cell divides continually with the guidance of your DNA to become you, all 37 trillion cells of you. Now, keep that in mind as we go to the hot and cold water experiment. First thing you need to do, get 3 containers. First one here will contain the cold water. Pour some tap water in, put a whole bunch of ice in the container. The ice will bring the temperature down to 32 degrees. Let me check. Yep, 32 degrees. Freezing point of water. As long as there's ice in there, it will be 32 degrees. Second container, pour regular tap water, cold tap water, into the container. Then bring the temperature of that water to 70 degrees. Our tap water here was about 75 degrees. We threw a couple of ice cubes in there, brought it down to 70 degrees. Here's the hot water. This hot water is 108 degrees. All we did was pour hot water out of the tap. That water came out at about 118 degrees. We poured some out, added some regular tap water, cold tap water, and brought the temperature to 108 degrees. Note that you don't want to go higher than 108 degrees because your skin is sensitive. You don't want to hurt yourself. So, here's the experiment. Take your left hand, put it inside the cold water. Leave it there for 10 seconds. Note, it's not very comfortable. There may be a little bit of discomfort and pain in there. After 10 seconds, take it out, put it inside the warm water. Note how it feels. Then, take your right hand, put it inside the hot water. Leave it there for 10 seconds. That's not very comforting either. 10 seconds. Then, put your hand in the warm water. How does it feel? All right. Now, take your left hand, put it in the warm water. Note how it feels. Take your right hand, put it in the warm water. Note how it feels. It feels significantly colder. This water is significantly colder than with my left hand. But wait a minute, it's the same water. How could it feel colder with one hand and warmer with the other? Something's not right here. How can that happen? Well, the answer lies in your brain and how your neurons interpret input. If your brain is accustomed to cold ice water, then the difference in warm compared to cold neurologically registers as a lot warmer, a larger difference. If your brain is accustomed to hot water, then the difference in warm compared to hot registers as a lot cooler, a larger difference. And when you compare that feeling of temperature in your left hand to your right hand, you can see that the brain has overcompensated. It's overcompensated the differences in temperature, and your hands feel different temperatures at the same time. Note, it's all relative. That's how your brain and neurons operate. Another example. Have you ever seen the moon on the horizon when it first comes up in the evening? Doesn't it look huge? I've done it many times. I still can't figure it out. It looks huge. Wait 3 hours, go look at it high in the sky. It looks like the dinky little moon that you're accustomed to. How can it possibly be that the same moon looks huge in one context and small in another? It's all relative. It's how your brain interprets your surroundings. The thought is that with the horizon acts as a data point from which your brain compares the size of the moon. For whatever reason, makes it look bigger. Once it gets up high in the sky, with no data points around it, it shrinks in your head. As Einstein said, it's all relative. That's how your brain and your neurons operate. So, with the results of the hot and cold water test in mind, let's consider someone with centrist views speaking to someone who is far right. Consider myself, I'll be the centrist. Let's find somebody who's far right, say 9 or 10 on the scale. Is there anybody out in the audience who would like to participate in here that would consider themselves alt-right? Yes, young lady over there, would you like to participate? Yes, pleased to meet you. My name is Andre.
Hannah.
Hannah, pleased to meet you. You know, I wonder if there's anything we can do about climate change.
Why do we keep bringing this up? Climate change is just a total hoax. Climate constantly changes over time. We've had extreme highs and lows over the last hundreds, if not thousands of years. Sea level rises and falls. It's just happens.
Well, yeah, you are correct. Sea levels do rise and fall. Temperatures do go up and down. But that usually takes tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. How can it be happening now so quickly?
The sky is falling. Let's run for our lives. You guys say it's just too much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Now, let's go in the opposite direction. I'll play the centrist. Is there anybody in the audience who would consider themselves far left, perhaps ultra left? Yes, gentleman over here. Come on down.
Oh. Hi. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you? Andre, your name is?
Roland.
Roland.
Nice to meet you, Andre.
Pleased to meet you. Let me ask the question. I wonder, is there anything we can do about climate change?
Well, I think we could do something about it. I mean, we got the scientific community says we have 10 years to do something drastic to get off carbon emission completely, or we're doomed. We're going to fry ourselves. And, no disrespect to Hannah, but people like that don't believe in global warming. I mean, you got to be crazy with all the scientific information that we have.
So how long do you think we have to...
Scientists are saying 8 to 10 years that we have to completely be off, we have to go to renewable energies with the Green Deal.
You mean completely?
Completely, yeah, or we're doomed.
Do you think it's reasonable in an 8 to 10 year span to do that?
Well, we have really no choice. I mean, what are you going to do if we don't? We're all dead. So I think we can do it. If we all put our minds to it. It's got to be a global achievement, so we're in right now we're in a critical state.
Well, we'll have to keep it in mind. Thank you very much for sharing that information.
All right, Andre.
All right, very good. Now, from those presentations, do you see how the alt-right sees the centrist as far left, and how the ultra-left gentleman that came down saw the centrist as far right? That happens for the same reason that the same warm water can feel hotter or colder. Your brain neurologically generates those perceptions relative to each other, and your brain overcompensates, generalizes, and becomes biased in that aspect. Let's call this biasing hot or biasing cold, like we do with the water. Better yet, how about if we call it biasing left or biasing right? The alt-right bias the centrist left. They perceive the centrist as far left. The ultra-left bias the centrist right. They perceive the centrist as far right. Perhaps these biases are reflected in the upside-down bell curve discussed earlier. So think about the hot and cold water experiment next time you get into a heated political argument with someone. Maybe you'll catch yourself biasing left or biasing right. Maybe you'll see the person with whom you're arguing biasing left or biasing right. With these issues in mind, let's start on a walk through history to get a better understanding of ourselves.